Well, hi again. This is Brian Knight from Pragmatic Works, and today I'm here with Jason Strate, SQL Server MVP, and also a database architect for Pragmatic Works. And we also have Mac with us today, who is our company mascot and aspiring DBA. So, Jason, Mac has just finished his first SQL Server install.
Sweet.
And yeah, not bad. He actually did a lot better than some of our senior people. That's a bad joke. All right, anyways, he got to the install, and he walked away. Now, there's some things he probably should have done before he walked away, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, SQL Server does a great job of installing, but it's not always the best for everybody.
All right, so let's go to the whiteboard and talk about some of these big mistakes that we see. Yep, I'm sorry. Hey, no rage for you right now. All right, let's go to the whiteboard and talk about some of the common mistakes that people see out there then.
All right.
Thanks, Matt. So, Jason, we mentioned before, Mac has just finished his server configuration. What do you think are some of the top 5 things that Mac should do next?
Okay, so there's a few things that Mac's going to want to be doing on his server. The first thing, number one, is TempDB. It needs to be set up properly.
Now, what do you mean by that?
And by properly, what I mean is you want to make sure that you've got it separated out from the other database files.
Okay.
So from all the user databases and all the system databases, and then also make sure that it's on the faster disk. You're not going to want it to be sharing the same disk that, say, the page file does.
Yeah, people forget how often the TempDB is really used. I mean, It's used for where costs in some cases, like sort operations.
Oh, absolutely.
Get page in there. Happens a lot of other things.
Yep.
So would you say, for example, like solid-state drives would actually help TempDB as well?
Solid-state drives helps. Keeps it running fast under the covers. The other thing is making sure that you have enough data files there to begin with. You need to have those extra data files out there so that you make sure that there's enough GAM and SGAM pages out there so that allocations of different objects can happen as fast as they need to.
Okay, so if they're starting a new terabyte system, how big do you think they should kind of roughly size this TempDB? It's a kind of it depends question, of course, but
it definitely depends.
You're a consultant.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Yes.
I've seen systems where for one workload on the same system, you need 86 gigabyte TempDB. And then I've modified the workload just a little bit with a few different queries and adding in a couple indexes in here and there, and it needed only 5 gigs.
Oh, wow.
So it's really workload and performance driven.
And also, if you run out of RAM in some cases, you'll see things start to consume a lot of that.
Yep. And then there's one other thing with TempDB is making sure that you have. Oh, I did mention the number of files. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. Well, that takes us right into memory configuration also, really. So memory configuration, SQL Server is all about memory.
Right.
So what should I do on the memory side?
On the memory side, the big thing is to make sure that you set your max memory. A lot of people are like, oh, SQL Server will just manage that. SQL Server will manage it. It will manage to take as much as it needs at any one time. So if you never need all of the memory, you may not really necessarily need to set max memory, but you need to reserve space for the operating system. You need to reserve space in memory so that you can log in.
How much should we reserve for the operating system if you're a dedicated SQL Server machine?
If it really, really depends. If you're looking for a very simple ballpark, I tend to go about 85%. That's a simple ballpark.
85% for SQL Server.
For SQL Server.
Gotcha.
Yep. And then that leaves about 15% for everything else that happens.
Network operations.
But that's right, and that's a very rough calculation.
SQL Server will take it.
Right.
And once it takes it, doesn't give it back either, does it? Very, very easily, at least.
Yeah, and there's a few people that put out calculations that actually give a finer-tuned version of what that should be. But typically when I do the calculation out and I follow their guidelines, it ends up being about 85%. So that's a good, that's a good swag.
Okay, good. Now, also, a big thing about this one as well, Jason, I found, is when you put analysis services and SQL Server on the same machine, which most people wind up doing, analysis services set to use 60% of your memory. Right. And it's going to be competing with SQL Server, and SQL Server is going to lose that because the analysis service does not give it back ever. Oh, once it hits that low threshold, it's 60 to 80%. Once it hits 60, it doesn't give back the low bar.
Yep.
Yeah, so you might have some issues around that as well.
Absolutely.
That's a good one then. So file placement. What do you consider file placement advice?
File placement advice is basically making sure that you get the files separated out from each other. You don't want the data files and log files on the same drives.
Okay.
You want to make sure you split that apart so that you're getting your simultaneous writes out to the logs so that you can push that the transactions through as fast as possible. And you don't want those conflicts because between the data files and log files, it's much different read operations.
Now, if you had your optimal system and you couldn't use solid state,
okay,
you had your optimal $1 million system. What what type of log, what kind of array would you put a log on? Kind of RAID 5, RAID 1, RAID 10. What would you put your log on versus your regular MDF file, your data file?
The log, I'm typically going to put it onto a RAID 10.
RAID 10?
Yes. So that way I can just get it out there. And oftentimes what I step back and I just talk to the storage engineers, and I'm like, all right, I need it to be this fast. Because it's a much better conversation with the storage engineers to say, I need it XYZ fast, than to say, I need it to
I need RAID 10.
Right. I need RAID 10, I need RAID 5, I need X number of spindles. They're professionals.
And they are protectionary people in many cases.
Yep.
They have the torches outside the cubes.
And sometimes they can give you, if they give you 1,000 spindles versus 100 spindles, and you asked for 500 spindles, it's more of a religious conversation than it is a here's what I need conversation.
Oh,
very cool. I kind of push it back to that and say, here's what I need from IOPS, here's what I need for megabytes per second, and that way
you kind of back into the number versus it.
Right, and then they can play around with it because you don't want them to give them, they can give you all the space you need, and they can put the RAID underneath that you need and give you the slowest disk if they get mad.
Gotcha.
And you won't notice until later.
Unless you bring beer.
Right.
And then changing the defaults. Last what do you do?
Actually, we missed file growth.
File growth. Excuse me.
File growth is a big one. And I typically see this where people will just let the SQL Server just stop every now and then in production in the middle of the day to grow out the file a little bit more. We often put in the zeroing out the file initialization piece, but you still have SQL Server stopping so that it can get the file grown out.
So let's zero into that. So the default configuration then, what is bad about that? That's going to stop? You said it's going to stop production potentially.
It's going to stop SQL Server from being able to lay down data because it has to grow the file. And by default, SQL Server grows files. I think it's 10 megs per growth on the data file, and 10%
very small.
Right, and 10% on the log file. And that can hurt because when you start at 1 meg for a log file and you go 10%. Well, that's a really small growth pattern, and you end up with lots of virtual log files.
And a lot of fragmentation or hard disk potentially also.
Oh, absolutely.
You're trying to grow. And you're probably growing in different spindles. So what's a better technique there?
The best thing is to pre-grow out everything. If you know about how big you're going to need for your data files, grow that out. If you don't know what you need, well, figure out what approximately you need, and then monitor your capacity.
So you should probably still leave autogrow on as an
Absolutely.
But then, is there an extended event you can do to watch for those kind of growth events? Or some way to kind of watch for that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, you can. I've got a couple that I play around with in my demos where it shows the growths. It doesn't show the planned growths. It only shows the growths that happen because of what's going on in the background.
Gotcha.
And those are kind of interesting because you can actually see the SQL statements that are tied into those.
So kind of bulk operation triggered this massive, All right, good. And then changing defaults.
Changing defaults is kind of a big one. Mac didn't have that problem because Mac didn't dig into things. But I often see where people go out and they start modifying things without thinking about them. Changing the number of worker threads that you have, changing CX packet. Max degree of parallelism. When you
very common one. Right. You read a blog post, right? You might be right.
Yeah. Changing that when you don't even know that that's a problem. And those are the things that typically when I do assessments, I look for those and see. Did you change all these ones? Did you change your network packet size? Nobody would bother to do that except for the customer I had that did do that. And they couldn't figure out why there was problems with their performance.
So they probably read a blog somewhere that was for a 10 terabyte system, and they're on a 50 gig system.
Yeah.
And they tuned it for that way.
Yeah, and they didn't follow the small print that said, don't actually do this. This just worked for me.
Right. So you mentioned assessments also. This is one of the things that you do pretty frequently also with Pragmatic Works. So kind of walk me through, what do you do in an assessment usually?
Assessment is basically we just go through the list of things that you got going on, and we look at your configuration, we look at how you've got everything laid out, we look at some statistics and pull that all together and give you some kind of really high-level, quick-hit solutions to the things that are going on. And then it's just a list of best practices to kind of get things moving forward.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And an awesome way we can also look at this is we can use the policy-based management system to kind of enforce these best configuration items that you mentioned before.
Oh, absolutely. And we've got a number of policies that we've already got set up that can dig into these and make sure that once we get everything fixed, you don't want to have health check. You don't go to the doctor to have a health health check and tell them, yeah, this is all fine, and then you ignore him for a year and come back and you're like, I'm coughing now, doctor. What happened? So the policies can help us get people get people in line with where they're supposed to be and make sure they stay there.
Gotcha.
So reporting on top of that.
That's multi-server. It's really, really nice way to configure it.
Nice thing you can give to your boss and be like, I did this all year long, and this is how long I kept it in compliance and all that jazz.
Even though it's doing itself.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, thank you for coming today, and
welcome.
also thank you for joining us today as well. And if you have any other comments or top mistakes that you see, please add some comments to the blog you see below as well. Have a great day.